They had a very late lunch today, and Fabiano was the last one in the restaurant, so maybe doing some last-minute preparation for that game against Tari. Either way, I'm going to say Caruana to take the points. Tari, heartbreaking day yesterday. It's going to be tough to recover.
He has to recover in classical game, but he's going to fail in the Armageddon.
I think you're spot on, Judith. I'm ganging up against you, David. And there we see the former world champion Magnus Carlsen getting ready. And Fabiano has arrived at the board, and curiously enough, Hikaru's preparation for today's game involved doing a talk at the Norway Summit.
Yeah, talking about his life as a streamer, talking about his entrepreneurial kind of endeavors there, talking about how he's kind of turned away from being a full-time professional player and encompassed all his business ideas there. Really fascinating stuff, but you wouldn't think it's ideal preparation for such a big match. Judith, do you think it will impact him on the board as we see the first move?
Yeah, for me it's really amazing to follow Nakamura, how he became a most popular chess streamer, we can say, and at the same time, while sometimes calling himself a chess amateur, playing on the highest level, and he's number 5 in the world, I think, right now. And he was very strongly not only playing in the candidates tournament, but it was just to clinch away that he would have been playing the World Championship match, right? So this is a mystery for me, how he can do this.
Yeah, imagine just a draw against Ding Liren last year in the final round of the candidates, and Nakamura would have had his shot at the world title. But
I wonder if he would be streaming every day after the game, if he would be playing the World Championship match.
But why break a winning formula, right? Because it seems like since he started streaming, he's relaxed, he's super happy, and it just seems to be helping his chess. He's the only person I know that can, while streaming, talk to chat, and also play good moves. I've tried it a few times, and it did not go well chess-wise. And there you see Hikaru taking back that king's pawn. What do you think he's going to play? C4?
well,
D4?
I would have guaranteed before the game he would start with E4, and there we go. He takes it back and just teases chat.
There are different tricks, right? To take it back or to leave it there for seconds, and then to make your opponent trying to guess that what is really going to happen in move 1.
And Magnus, of course, he copies. We're going to see knight f3, knight c6, and maybe Magnus himself will play at Berlin.
Yeah, we will await the opening. Hikaru usually goes for the Spanish when he does dabble in 1e4. I'm glad, I must say, on behalf of Magnus, that he's not going for the French defense. That backfired badly against Fabiano in the first round, and it wasn't a position that he enjoyed getting out of the opening there. So this one, it is the Roy Lopez, the Spanish, and moment of truth. Will Magnus go for the Berlin or his World Championship repertoire? In Magnus's last classical game before this tournament against myself, he played the Marshall Gambit. And here we go, no Berlin today. He kicks back the bishop, and we are headed towards the Marshall. Judith, this is one of the openings that's been your bread and butter as well.
Oh, absolutely. I even played it with the black color in the later years of my career, but mainly I was playing on the white side. I'm very curious what Magnus has in mind. Of course, Marshall attack was always a system which was bothering people who are playing Rai Lopez, and it was always very challenging. So that's why many of the players already these days, they don't even enter into the Marshall unless they want to make a draw or want to be very solid and test the memory of the other player of black, because you have to remember a lot of things. So if c3, then d5. That's the Marshall, but I'm expecting that it's going to be avoided.
It tends to be the pattern that people avoid the Marshall, because the Marshall has pretty much been worked out quite deeply.
Yeah, I remember the days when I was young and commentators would say, yes, it's the Marshall attack. We're going to see some aggressive play. Now it's like, oh no, it's the Marshall. It's going to be a forced draw in 40 moves. Times change.
That's how the opening, what people are playing, it's transforming, right? Because players want to have a game, they want to be sharp. And look at that.
He's allowing the Marshall.
We have Marshall on the board.
Yeah, actually, if you asked me to predict the opening beforehand, I would have said Nakamura is going to go straight into this. Nakamura doesn't really want a slow maneuvering battle, I feel, at least not in the classical portion of this match. And here we go, it's the Marshal. Is he going to grab this pawn, as I did a few months ago against Magnus Carlsen? And knight takes e5 on the board. White will be a pawn up, but black will have activity and a lead in development as compensation.
But which means, I think, that it's the strategy of Nakamura is to make a draw practically, and then go for the Armageddon.
Or at least play a no-risk position. And in that game I mentioned that I had against Magnus a few months ago, he played bishop b7 against me, and he told me later it was his World Championship prep. I think he told many people, so I'm not revealing any secrets there.
I was just wondering if you're not going to get in trouble with this
he
one.
said it in an interview, I believe. So instead he goes to c6, the main line, the main move, and no surprises so far. A well-known position.
For me, it's very interesting to see the strategy of Nakamura, because I think he's great in consuming his energy. Mm-hmm. And basically, he was giving a talk, right, in the just few hours before the game of the start of the game, and maybe he didn't even have to spend too much time, right? Because he said, okay, I'm going a4, Magnus is going to play e5, so I'm going all the way to the Marshal. If he's going to play Berlin, there is also another way to simplify the position. I'm going to test him here and there. Queen f3, very common. So we win a pawn, or he wins a pawn, compensation, everything goes fine, and then I just go for the Armageddon. Yeah. While Magnus had to prepare quite a bit, so it has he's very practical.
Yeah, very pragmatic strategy.
He certainly is. And okay, neither David or yourself, Judith, will be surprised to hear that this has been played before. 64 games in the... What a nice number, 64. I can say actually that...
I thought it was much more.
Okay, can you guess how many games end in a draw?
64.
David!
Am I correct?
Yeah. If you play bishop takes knight, 64% of the games end in a draw.
Yeah, I had a bit of a cheat code there. I had studied this position just a few months ago against Magnus, and I think I was ready to take this knight off the board.
Yeah, bishop d5 is one of the normal moves, but I think also knight e2 also leads to some forced draw at the end. Rook e8, knight e4, bishop g4, queen g2, queen h5 or something.
Mm-hmm. Some forcing lines here, Judith.
Yeah, the other one is bishop d5. I think you also try to simplify maybe with bishop f4. Afterwards, but white is really trying to get something extremely small, just a comfortable position. You can't really dream about real advantage here, but basically you're testing the opponent.
Yeah, that's the problem for white, just the fact that these three pieces are asleep on the queen side, the fact that it takes them 2 or 3 moves to get into the game means that white cannot bank on an advantage. The extra pawn for white, not too relevant right now. It's this extra d3 pawn, which often actually just drops off the board a bit later. You have to be wary about your king as well. So all of those factors combined means that white lacks the... time for an objective advantage according to opening theory, but Nakamura will try something. The Marshal attack, white often has these little small ideas to get a playable position, to get a small risk-free advantage. It's just about whether Magnus can neutralize that, and knight d2, as you mentioned, Judith, on the board.
Yeah. You know, I'm wondering sometimes that why a player like Magnus, why does he play Marshal? Can you tell me? Why don't you play? I mean, there is the Chigorin, there's so many different ideas in the classic Rai Lopez, and you can't say that it's boring. It's a very complex game. So, is he ready to go for an equalish position? I understand the dynamic of the position is very tempting, because it has a lot of energy. For the pawn, you get compensation. If you memorize all the lines, it looks pretty safe. There are no huge dangers, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's just the fact that he's played too many World Championship matches. He's a bit jaded by that, as we've seen by him walking away now from the world title. And the more you study with computers, the more you realize the Marshal is totally fine. You equalize with black and against the very best players in the world. that tends to be a decent result. And I've had this position before myself as white. We're about to see an endgame. Nakamura has had it against Magnus, this exact position, I think, in the past. And it's a sign of respect, I think, Judith. Magnus Hikaru, enough to say, I will happily force a draw against you with black. And I think this one is going to go down to the Armageddon. Queens are off the board. The white knight is pinned in the centre, but white can use the fact that there are some tactics along the diagonal against the black king to equalise this one. I think we'll stay with this one just a few more moves, and then we'll do a roundup of the other openings, which are far more tense.
Yes, and I have to say you're completely right. Very insightful comments there. Drama aplenty, would you say?
I mean, I've jinxed it. First of all, I've cursed commentators curse there. I'm everywhere. You just can't escape me. Sorry, everyone at home. Probably sick of my voice by now. But yeah, you heard it here first. It's going to be an Armageddon. The players have raced into the endgame, Judith.
Well, I had this game, I think, exact this position against Svidler in some event. Maybe World Championship, I don't know, St. Louis 2005 or somewhere. And they are going to repeat moves, and then in 20 minutes we have the first Armageddon, right?
Yeah. Well, and they are literally racing towards that draw. I mean, we haven't even looked at any other games, and these two will have finished.
Only
King
this very
G3.
interesting one.
They only started 10 minutes ago, Ivanka.
Well, what's your opinion on this type? I mean, how do you think about this?
It's practical. It makes sense for their tournament standings. It makes sense because they both deem each other as big rivals for the title eventually. We see the handshake there. Of course, disappointing not to see kind of a full-blooded fight against them, but that's the beauty of this format. That's why we love Norway Chess. We see an Armageddon. We get even more action between these two. So I don't think we can complain too much. And it's understandable. Hikaru's had a long day, busy day, giving a Q&A session earlier. And for Magnus with black, good result.
It certainly is a good result. And of course, Hikaru did run a gauntlet. You know, he started with 2 blacks in a row. Now he's had his first white and agreed a very quick draw against Magnus. The players will be back in roughly 20 minutes to face off in an Armageddon. And of course, that will have a decisive result. Someone will be walking away with 1.5 points, the other one, 1 point. And, well,